My guest today is a suicide survivor, a certified recovery peer specialist, a decade-long touring musician in a Billboard charting heavy metal band. After years of peer support work, he took a psychology degree from USF and built a mental health company from scratch, bootstrapping it for 4.5 years without ever taking a paycheck. Cope Notes sends daily text-based mental health support to people in more than 100 countries, over 6 million messages delivered, $10 a month, every single one written by a real human being. His name is Johnny Crowder. He's a TEDx speaker. He's been featured in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and CNN. And the most impressive thing he says he's ever done in his entire career is just simply not quit. Welcome to the 50 Cheers story of Johnny Crowder. And so I was excited as I was thinking about who are some amazing guests that I could bring on that I have not only a personal connection to, but affinity and really like. And of course, Johnny, your name, always comes to mind when it comes to not only a founder I truly respect, but someone who has lived many 50 chair moments that we both kind of have got to share with each other.
True.
Over the years. So thank you for coming on today, man, and being willing to share your story. I want to start though in a scene, and this scene is something that I pulled as I was kind of getting prepped for some time with you. Even though we know each other fairly well, I wanted to go out there and just kind of see the stories that Johnny has out there in the universe. And one of them that I think is kind of an appropriate first moment that we can start with is sometime back in 2020. Cope Notes is about 2 years old, according to this story. You checked your business bank account. It was empty. And you're about to transfer your own personal savings to pay your CTO so the company can survive. Walk me through the next 48 hours.
Dude, I will also tell you that I discovered something during this period, which is that your bank will call you. Like, I got a call from Chase and they were like, "Hey, buddy, you doing okay?" And I'm like, "What?" And like, the lady was like, "Well, we just wanted you to know that your business bank account has like no money in it." And I'm like, "I'm aware." Like, did you think I was just kind of cool in it? And it was very humbling for me because I was like, she said something like, "Well, I always try to call all of my clients when they dip below 10,000. And I was like, "That's 10 would be great. Like if we had $10,000, that'd be awesome right now. It'd buy me a month." And I had been paying I only had one employee and he was basically a contractor. It's funny because I had asked him to be a co-owner, 50-50 owner with me. And he said no. He's like, "Pay me money." And I'm like, "Oh, the thing about that is that I don't have any." And so I figured I would give you half the company instead. And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay." And so then I started freelancing and using the money from freelancing and doing contract work to pay him. So I'd literally get paid via PayPal and then send it right to him. So it was like very touch and go financially. And this situation, I remember being like, I called him actually and I told him, "Hey, I want to let you know." I called him a little bit before this experience, actually, and I told him we're really low on money. And by we, I don't just mean the company, because I wasn't taking a paycheck. He was the only person making any money. And I told him, I wanted to let you know we are running out of money. And by we, I mean not just the company, but me as a guy. So like when I am out, the company is also out. And so if you want to look for another position, I'm happy to write you a referral letter or try to find. So I hadn't accepted defeat, but I thought it wouldn't be fair to call him one day and say, "Hey, I can't pay you." And so this period where it was like coming down to the wire, I could sleep at night because I'm like, at least I'm not going to surprise this poor guy.
Yeah.
Can't pay you.
I start with this scene because there is a weight as a founder that only you carry. And that bank account is one of those weights because you know it's in it and you're constantly, crossing maybe the zero threshold, back up a little bit to zero, back up. And maybe founders can handle that because you're taking the risk, but bringing along other people with you on that journey, not everybody can be in the loop on what's going on, with your finances.
Yeah.
So how was that? How was that for you personally? as you were going through that? And then how did you manage, I think you shared a portion of that, which is you just kind of gave them a heads up, but how have you managed that since? How has that experience helped you manage that situation moving forward?
I want to contextualize my answer with the fact that a lot of people don't know this. I worked at I worked at two startups before I started my own. One, I'm not going to name either. One was, so I was a copywriter for both. And one organization treated me fairly well, and one organization did not. And the second one that I worked at shortly before I started Cope Notes, they wage thefted me several months of pay. They kept saying, your paycheck's right around the corner, and we're having an issue with our HR system. And so check your mail. Is it really not there yet? We should have already sent you your paycheck, like that type of stuff. We can't do ACH because our ACH system is down. So we're going to print one out for you. Oh, our printer's out of ink. There's always an excuse. So I had gone several months and I had been working hard for them. I was their third employee. No, I was their first employee. There were two co-founders and me. So I was their very first employee. They went to 70 employees. So they were in hyper growth, and then they overspent, ran out of money, and started shortchanging their employees. And that's why I took it so seriously when I was looking at my one employee. It's I told this guy I would pay him money for doing work. It is my responsibility to make sure that he continues having a job. And I'd like it to be here, but if it can't be here, I'm going to help him find somewhere else. So I felt that pressure. And even honestly, since then, I have employees who have kids. Almost all my employees have children. So that's a weird thing where their families are relying on them to bring home groceries. Yeah. I felt pressure before, but I think as our team has grown and as I've hired people with families, and you get to know these people and care about them, and they'll share their financial goals. They're like, oh yeah, I had an employee who's like, I'm building a tiny home, and it's I want you to build that tiny home.
Yeah.
Or someone's like, oh yeah, we're saving up for a big move, and it's but I want you to be able to move into a new house that's big enough for your kids, and so you get emotionally bought in, and it definitely, you feel that pressure of when a deal falls through, you're like, dang, did I just take a scoop of Gerber's out of their baby's mouth right now by not closing that deal?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's incredible. It's an incredible weight. And, one of the things that I admire about you is, you have taken a route to starting Cope Notes. And for the audience, Johnny is the CEO of Cope Notes. I'll let him tell that story because it's an amazing company. It's doing incredibly well. But Johnny has chose a path that not a lot of founders, especially tech founders in education, choose, which is to bootstrap your company. And so was it those early experiences with those two startups that made you think that? And then, looking back, not to ask two questions at once, but I was thinking about the CTO declining your 50% offer. That was probably a bigger blessing than you realized at the time. But what was that decision for you? Why did you choose that route?
Yeah, it's a big misconception that I chose it.
Okay.
What actually happened was that I offered 50% of my company to someone before I understood what that meant. I did not understand the implications I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, I don't have any money. Do you want to half it? By the way, I was already a year and a half, 2 years into building it. And I was like, do you just want half? Cause I can't, that's how unprepared. I spent my whole life touring in a death metal band. And then I'm like, I'll start a tech company. I did not know what I was doing. And the same is true with raising. Had I known that I could raise money, dude, I didn't take a paycheck from Cope Notes for 4.5 years. 4.5 years. I worked on it without taking a paycheck. If I knew early on that I could have raised money and had groceries and paid rent and stuff on it, dude, you bet I would have done it. But I didn't know that I could. By the time I found out that I could, we were already doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. And I was like, well, now I might be able to do this thing. I wish you guys would have helped me 4 years ago, but I didn't even know you could help me. So I think it was really a timing thing. I don't perceive it as this sort of punk, investors get out of here. We're the only ones that know what this should be. It was more wait a second, you guys could have helped with this. Well, you should help. And then by the time I spoke to some investors and they shared what the terms would be, I'm like, honestly, if that's all of the money that you would give us, we might as well just go close that in revenue. Because then I don't have to give up more of the company. So I will say when that first employee said no to the equity, I got my feelings hurt. I was like, I felt rejected. Like I asked a girl to the prom and she says no. And I'm like, oh, how could you? And now I'm like, wow, he just really set me up for a much different future by saying no.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I have to say, I made that mistake and my co-founder said yes to 50%. But that,
boy,
yeah, that made some issues later on, which we won't get into here. But yeah, so once I'm assuming like there's this perception about bootstrapping that, it forces you into a corner to do things and to iterate because you don't have investor cash to just go experiment. You say you didn't realize this until after the fact, but to be in a position where you're making revenue and then making the choice to raise money, for most founders, that is ideal. Because if you start to look at the path, right, for each round of money you raise and the amount of equity you're going to get diluted by, even if it's a huge raise, most founders end up somewhere between 5 and 10% of their company, starting from maybe 100%.
Yeah.
What was that, what was that like for you? Do you feel like you were kind of boxed in a corner and you had to work your way out to get to where you wanted to go?
Yeah, like, I'll look at my friends. And by the way, every founder I know, I was just at a Bible study this weekend with a bunch of founders, and we were talking about how like the sin we struggle the most with is envy by way of comparison. We look at, like I look at my friends who raised capital. I'm like, man, they got good health insurance and like they got a mortgage, like that's probably pretty sweet. And then they look at me and they're like, oh, he doesn't have to do any freaking board meetings. And like, so everyone's like looking at each other thinking that everybody has it better. And one of the guys was sharing, he was like, I invented my company 10 years ago and I own 14% of a company that I invented. So like everybody else gets a nice big slice. And he's like, what's crazy is like, they only gave us just enough to get to the next ask for more money to do the next round. And so I'm hearing that and I'm like, wow, I am really grateful that I'm not in that position. But then we were talking more and I'll catch myself doing comparison again because he's like, yeah, we hired like this guy from Google and then we hired this person from over there. And then I'm just like, oh, so jealous. Like what, to have a talent budget like that? So I think for us, how that manifested in the early years was like, I had to learn a bunch of stuff I didn't know about. So like I learned a lot about Webflow, WordPress, marketing. Like I did all the copy on our website, all the graphics. I created every marketing material that we had. And so it gave me a lot of skills because I couldn't outsource them. That was on one hand, that's a pro. On the other side, it was like, man, I wish we had more money to, like, for example, if we had $100K to throw at marketing for a whole year and we did like an ad spend on Google and we did like social ad spend and made like TikTok videos and boosted them or something. And then we put 30 grand of that into conferences and we kind of split it up and could test en masse and see where we're netting the most. That'd be really interesting. But to me, I'm like, I'm not trying to eat up that much runway on an experiment. So I think when you're bootstrapped, it's the same way you spend if you're using somebody else's credit card versus your own. It's exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense, man. Well, I do want to get to the Cope Notes story, but I want to take us back a little bit, even before that. And I know your origin story, but I want to kind of know from your standpoint, like growing up, what did success look like to you? Like, how did you think this was all going to turn out?
Dude, my definition of success has changed a billion times. Not a billion. It has changed probably 3 or 4 times, but that's a lot. When I was younger, young, it was having an apartment of my own, like no roommates, having a car with AC. And I thought if I could make $30,000, like that'd be incredible. Like I can't even, what would I do with myself? That'd be amazing. I remember those were my very specific car with AC, apartment of my own with no roommates, 30 grand salary. Boy.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
What age are we talking about here?
Honestly, dude, for most of my like years as a minor, like probably until way too late in my life, those were my goals. It's like, man, I wish I could get a Lunchable, which are terrible, but I envied them. But I remember like when I became focused on music, it was like, I just want to be a rock star. I want to play arenas and stadiums and I want to go platinum and I want to sell. So then I started dreaming real big in terms of like accomplishment I want to look out and see 60,000 kids screaming my lyrics back at me. Like, and I don't care what it'll take to get there. And then my definition of success shifted to recovery. So it's like, oh, actually, I want to be happy and healthy and safe. I want to not use drugs and alcohol. I want to exercise. I want to not be angry anymore. I want to not take medication if I don't need it. Like, so it became really health oriented. And then when I started Cope Notes, it was funny because when I started this, I had no plans of it becoming as big as it is now. It was just a project, like a volunteer project. But then I drank a little bit of the startup Kool-Aid and I'm like, oh, I want to sell for $1 billion. Like anybody has any idea how much money that is. And I remember thinking like, I need $1 billion. And my friend was like, you won't even buy the deluxe Chick-fil-A sandwich. You buy regular because you don't want to pay 50 cents to put a slice of cheese and tomato on it. Like, what are you going to do with $1 billion? Like, you're not going to buy anything. So over time it changed. And now I think interestingly, it's kind of a long answer, but now I think my definition of success has way more to do with my quality of life and integrity, like who I am as a person, how I treat other people, how I feel when I'm alone in a room by myself. Like, do I have peace internally? Am I right with God? If I get married, am I right with my family? Like that stuff. Am I proud of myself? Am I secure? Do I appreciate myself and the people around me and the blessings in my life? That is now my definition of success, which would probably, if we had investors, drive them up a wall. But it's true.
Yeah. Well, maybe that is the real definition of success. Just as a side note, part of the 50 Chairs story that on occasion I will talk about is that, your calling in life is part of that is, finding your purpose. And, one of the things that you and I got a chance to talk about that I absolutely love, because when you hear the bio, you're like rock star in a death metal band. So check the box. You've had the 60,000 screaming fans and gone on stage.
Not quite 60,000, but one day we'll get there.
You've had that experience. And Cope Notes and kind of that, and you said, and you're speaking, the speaking that you do. And from the outside, it maybe looks disjointed. It's like, what do these things have in common with each other? And you really explained it to me in a way that I thought was beautiful, which was, these are all forms of ministry and art that kind of express themselves in different ways, different parts of me. Have you found that to be the unifying kind of theme for you through all of this?
Dude, I have a life mission statement. And I've thought extensively about this for years. And now that I have it, it hasn't changed. Like, this is true. I want to make stuff that helps people feel better. So there are 3 components to that. I want to create something. So it has to be like something from my brain. Like I came up with this riff or I wrote this story or something. I want to make something that helps people. So I can't be the only person benefiting from this. I can't like sitting in my room and writing guitar and being like, that's pretty. I want to show somebody immediately. I want to like send a voice note to my mom and be like, isn't this pretty? So somebody else can enjoy it. But ideally so that it's helping somebody, it's healing somebody. And that's that 3rd component. It helps them feel better. I want to make stuff that helps people feel better. And Cope Notes is something that I made that helps people feel better. My keynotes are something that I wrote that helps people feel better. Music is something that I wrote that helps people feel better. It's all, dude, if you came over to my house and I made you a pizza, and you're like, man, I love this. It's like, great, I made something that helps somebody feel better.
That, man, I love that. So talk to me about the day that Cope Notes, before there was a product, before there was even an idea, there was no company yet. Take me back to that first text where you're like, hey, there's something here. Like, what was going on in your life that you said, hey, let me experiment with this almost like in a market discovery way, but in like the version you could do right now, today.
Yeah, this is whenever people tell me, like I'll speak at a like entrepreneurs organization or YPO or like a college or something, like an entrepreneurship program. And people will be like, well, I want to like beta my idea, but like I don't have money or I don't have time or whatever. And I'm like, dog, like My beta of Cove Notes, I sent, and I distinctly remember this. It was on Halloween, and that's just by chance. It wasn't because I chose Halloween. It was just I was on tour, and it was Halloween day, 2017, and I texted 32 people because if I remember correctly, you could only mass text 32 people at once at that time on an iPhone. It could be different, but that's how I remember it. 32 people. I sent a message that said something along the lines of, this is just a friendly reminder that the second half of today could be great, even if the first half of today sucked. Like there's no rule in the book that says that what already happened is now going to dictate what's going to happen next. Like things can change. Something like that. And I sent that because I was running a nonprofit project that actually we never even, I say we, it was me. I never incorporated as a nonprofit, but I tried to get it off the ground for like 6 months. It was called, maybe closer to a year, called Not a Therapist. And it was like chatting with a peer support specialist, which was just me. So you can text me, call me about how you feel, and I'll be there to support you. It was name your price. So everyone named $0. So the business model was failing because it was making no money, and I couldn't raise any money. I was doing it by myself. And so, but people, I had done like 100 sessions with people and collected feedback. And everyone was like, my favorite part is like, as in the client, get to talk a lot. And then you, Johnny, just say a sentence or two at the end. And then I chew on it for a while. I'm like, wow, why don't I just do that? Why don't I just send the 2 sentences to people and skip the hour-long session? I'll just say a little, and then they can text me back as much as they want. So I flipped it. And on that day, so many people replied to me and said, like, how did you know I needed to hear that? Like, wow, the timing of this is crazy. And I didn't know what was going on in these people's lives, Gary. I chose them at random. So this told me, like, I had a hunch that the power of the brain to interpret stimulus is a force to be reckoned with. Like you drive past a billboard and you're like, oh, God, use that billboard to speak to me. And it's like, dude, that billboard was just there. That billboard doesn't know what's going on in your life, but you interpreted it and then took an action. It like hit you. And so I was like, I wonder if I text people, if they will interpret it through the lens of what's going on in their life and it will hit them. And immediately, like same day, a bunch of people were like, wow, how did you know I needed to hear that? And I said, I didn't. I'm like, ooh, this is kind of interesting. It really encouraged people. And I was like, I wonder if I could do it again tomorrow.
And so did you?
No, I didn't. Okay. But I took a bunch of screenshots and I'm like, I want to do something with this. Okay. Like I want to, and I was noodling on the idea and I was like, I wonder if I make it was a Google sheet of a bunch of different messages that I wrote and then would send them to people on my list. And then I like made a little WordPress where people could type in their phone number and then I would manually add their phone number to my list and type it on my own phone. Sketchy.
Yeah. So what prompted you to say, was this like out of your own experience that, someone texted you something and it kind of made a difference in your life? That you said, hey, let me see if this would be something that I could do randomly? Or, what prompted you to say, hey, there's something here?
It was, so I went to school for psychology, which is something that a lot of people don't know because I was touring. So they were like, wait a second, I thought you didn't go to school. And I'm like, well, what's funny is I got, like my band started touring while I was in college. So I finished my degree online and I was studying, an area of study for me was neuroscience, and I learned about something called ecological momentary intervention, or EMI. And it's a fancy way of saying that if you take something that you might learn in a therapy session and you chop it up into bite-sized pieces and then deliver it in non-clinical settings, like at work or at school or at home, you can interrupt automatic negative thought and train the brain to think differently. So I'm like, man, if I took like pieces of health education content or advice or encouragement, like if I could do that randomly and surprise the brain, we could actually make a big difference in the way like people's daily life, in the way that they process their daily life. But it was a hope and a prayer. I didn't want to start a company. I actually tried to start it underneath a nonprofit that I was volunteering for. And they're like, we don't have money for this. I'm like, okay. And then actually when I started it, I tried to make it a nonprofit and met with a nonprofit lawyer. And she was like, don't make it a nonprofit. You are going to torpedo your project. So the only reason it became a company was because multiple paths that I tried to take it down the doors got shut on me.
Well, it's funny. I've used this many times before, but it seems to be always true. And just listening to your story, I can see it. That's like you can't connect all these dots looking forward, but looking backward, gosh, thank goodness these things happened, right? Because they really did set you up for a future that was, meant to be in a lot of ways.
Dude, I'm a big car person, and if I'm remembering my lore correctly, the only reason Lamborghini existed was because Ferrari snubbed Lamborghini. Because there was a guy who's like, hey, I'm a big Ferrari fan. I own Ferraris and I have suggestions on how to make them better. And Ferrari was like, what do you know? You sell tractors or something like that. And then the Lamborghini guy's like, fine, I'm going to build my own cars. And it's like, I think in the moment, the Lamborghini guy was like, man, I can't believe it. This sucks. And then it's like, well, now look, it was just, it changed that no changed history. And the same has been true for me.
Yeah. Me too, man. Sometimes in those moments, it's hard to see, what God is doing in your life, but there is a plan. So I want to take you to a different part. Cope Notes has been doing amazingly well. There's a lot of news around mental health, kids' mental health, schools. It's a very interesting time to be in ed tech, I will say, as a fellow ed tech person, although I don't know if you consider yourself in that bucket.
Real quick interjection. I have to relate to you on this. My mom asked me hey, is what's going on with the economy affecting you at all? With the Fed? And I was like, well, Mom, health and education are being defunded and we are a health education company. So she was cracking up. Anyway, please continue.
But this idea that this generation has had more mental health struggles than any other generation. Are you finding that to be true? What are your customers saying about, your product? Where is it being used? Why is it being used with younger folks as they're kind of going through this?
Yeah, the example that I would point to immediately is we've done a lot of work with public school districts, way more than I would expect to have done. So we've gone live in over 100 schools, just in the state of Florida, over 100 schools. So we've served a lot of groups, and it's interesting because everybody, when we do a school program early on, we're thinking about kids. And then we come to realize the need on the faculty and staff side is really pronounced. And then the need on the parents and family side is really pronounced. And you realize kids are in this unique position where so many of their social determinants of health are the adults around them. In order to picture this, there's a room full of 30 kids and all of them are generally healthy. No mental or emotional health conditions in the whole group, which statistically seems very unlikely, but just go with me here. And then picture a teacher who is going through a divorce and who will sometimes snap at the kids and sometimes lose her temper and sometimes be really mopey and disconnected. And so because this teacher is dysregulated, and I'm not saying the teacher's diagnosed with anything, she's just circumstantially going through something difficult. If the teacher doesn't have healthy coping mechanisms, let's say she has a few glasses of wine almost every night of the week while she's grading papers. How might that affect the kids? So it's really not only is there a pronounced need with kids due to the absolute bombardment that they are on the receiving end of in all forms of media, but also the parents around them, what the adults around them think is we got to help these kids. And I'm like, oh, but in order to do that, we got to help the adults too,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a huge teacher shortage going on, because I think COVID was tough on a lot of folks, a lot of teachers. And I understand, I get it. As a former teacher, those were tough times for everybody. The system as a whole is going through some contractions, right? You've got technology backlash in schools, devices, and a lot of people are just coming to this conclusion that social media has caused all of these harms. And so let's just get rid of the phone and the technology. Is that what you're hearing from, as you're working with schools and districts, because I imagine you're getting this delivered via text message, right? And it's
yeah,
in some cases, I understand the backlash, but in other cases, this is the only vehicle for students to receive some of this positive support. Sometimes the only time in schools that they're going to have access to these types of materials and resources. So I think there's a wave coming that this is going to be at a disadvantage for some kids. What are you finding?
Yeah, so sometimes they'll meet with a school and they say, we don't want students to have their phones during school hours. And so we want to make sure you're only delivering these messages outside of school hours. And first of all, I don't run a school. So like I get if you want kids to not use their phones during class. And part of the magic of this intervention style is that it is in different settings. It's at your school, it's at your work, it's at your home. And let me tell you, as a kid who went to school in Florida, if I got a Cope Notes text message telling me how to control my temper or how to forgive myself for a mistake or how to trust other people or how to communicate my own needs or how to calm myself down if I'm having a panic attack or how to overcome depression, I will tell you that if I got a text message about one of these things, it would be the only form of mental health education I received at all that day. And by the way, experiencing that during school can help build a more positive association with the school experience. So it's a rock and a hard place. Like I have some schools who say, don't deliver it during school hours, and some who say, please deliver it during school hours because these kids are getting bullied and they feel alone and they're overwhelmed by the coursework. And we want to make sure they're getting the interventions when they're in the thick of it. Like we want to interrupt those automatic negative thought patterns while they're in the middle.
Yeah. I can see both sides of that argument, but I would hope and think that having that intervention during the period of time that they need it most, school can be hard for any kid. I think that would be important. So talking about positive messages, the interrupting of the thought process, as an entrepreneur, there are moments where people speak things into your life, maybe in the middle of your 50 chairs or your own stuff that's going on. I always call entrepreneurship it's like a roller coaster, man. You talk to me one day, I'm on the mountaintop. You talk to me the next day, it's the worst day I've ever had. And, everything in between, and the people around you have to sometimes ride that roller coaster with you. But there are moments where people speak things and interrupt your own thought processes as you're building. Did that happen to you as you're were building Cope Notes? I can imagine, especially that when that check wasn't clearing, you're wondering if this is going to work out. People that spoke things into your life?
Yeah, I will say that I am blessed to have friends who, many of them have tact, which is not something that men are known for. So I feel very blessed to have that. Like I heard this clip from a podcast where these two guys were talking about how most men need to hear, you are capable of great things, but you do not need to accomplish these great things in order for me to love and accept you. And it's like, man. Because some people, when they try to communicate that, they'll say something that makes it sound like they're pretty sure I'm going to fail. They're like, hey, man, you don't even need Cope Notes. And it's like, well, don't do that. Like, please encourage me. Like, don't tell me that. Like, imagine if you're like talking to a friend about parenting and they're like, dude, even if you're a terrible father, and you're like, well, don't frame it like that. Like, see if you can frame it a little more in a more encouraging way. So I think what I needed to hear from people is like, what I loved is the way that my therapist worded this. When like things got really tough, he said, you've already done more than you'll ever have to do. So even if you never so much as held the door open for an old lady again in the rest of your life, you still have done so much good for the world and other people that if you stopped right now, you still would have surpassed your quota for however many people you're supposed to love on. And it felt so calming to me. Like now I don't have an obligation to do this. I have an opportunity to do it. Because I would tell him, this is why he said it. I told him I can't stop. And he says, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can quit right now. Do not rob yourself of that power. You can quit. You choose not to. And I was like, dang, that's kind of empowering,
Yeah. So what was the choice not to quit? I mean, what keeps you going in the middle of those really tough times?
Dude, I've said this on interviews before, the most impressive thing I've ever done in my whole career is not quit. Like I think every founder is faced with an opportunity once a month to hang it up. Like, you have a key employee quit and some party is just like, F it, I'm done, I'm out of here. Or like, you roll out this new key feature and then your developer is like, hey, by the way, we have a bunch of support tickets because this thing doesn't work. And you're just like, F it, I'm out of here. Like once a month, there's an opportunity to like get up and walk away. And I genuinely think like the only reason that we've been able to accomplish anything noteworthy is because we have persevered. And I routinely tell people that the thing that keeps me in the game is the work, like the gravity of what we're doing. Because I tell you, Gary, if I ran a cupcake shop, I would have closed it 3 months in. I do not care enough about cupcakes. Like I don't have enough skin in the cupcake game to like persevere through the ups and downs of business. But right now, like I would rather go for broke, do like literally saving and changing people's lives and getting them sober and getting into treatment, people regaining custody of their children and reuniting with long lost, like estranged loved ones because they forgave each other, like overcoming these patterns of isolation and unhealthy coping mechanisms. Like Gary, tens of thousands of people, like I'd rather go broke doing that than strike it rich making cupcakes. So there's something about like the nature of the work and how excited I am to get to serve the people around me in this way that even when things are hard, I'm like, I'd rather fail doing this than succeed doing something else.
Wow, that's powerful, man. I feel like that's finding that alignment in your life. One of the things that we're talking about a lot at Bloom is this idea of human flourishing. What does it mean to flourish, especially around AI and everything that's happening in the market, and what does it mean to even be human? And what's interesting is if you start to look at all the research around it, and then you just talk to people, a lot of these things marry up. One of them is this idea of values alignment, like understanding your values and then aligning that with the work that you do. And when that happens, there's magic, man. And that magic that you just described is part of that. So encourage people to think about that and find that.
The way I think about it is like when I was a kid, you did not have to tell me, Johnny, go to your room and play guitar. Go to your room and practice guitar. Nobody made me, bro. I'm like 11 printing out System of a Down guitar tabs on my mom's work computer and taking them into my room and playing for hours. Like nobody made me do it. And I think if you have that bone where like, yeah, even if I think all entrepreneurs have like, well, nobody made me do my work today. No, like I chose to do it. Then if you already have that part where no one has to make you, then the only question is like, well, what am I going to choose to do if no one's going to make me do it? And that is such a pivotal choice. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, in my opinion, they are wasting so much extraordinary potential. They'll like build a $1 billion business making the tops of screws. And it's like, but you could have made a $7 million business making like prosthetic limbs for people and giving them a new lease on life. And you didn't. And I understand. I don't think everybody, like that person doesn't owe amputees that work. I don't owe people mental health support. Like you're not obligated to do that. It's not an obligation. I just think, man, what an opportunity. Like that guy could have done something and he has a yacht and that's awesome. And I'm just like, man, but it's cooler than a yacht. Like a woman getting to play tennis again after a car accident, like that's freaking cooler than a yacht.
Yeah. Yeah, that mission alignment. It's interesting. You think about there's an opportunity cost to everything that you do, right?
Yeah.
So you could, take that same energy and go do something that makes a difference in the world. Or like you said, you could screw make doorknobs or whatever. Nothing against doorknob makers, by the way. If there's anybody listening that's a doorknob maker,
but check this out. You can be the yacht guy and make the prosthetic limbs. Like there's no shortage of people doing that too. So I think sometimes even myself, I'll catch myself making this dichotomy between, you got to choose between making money and helping people. No, you don't. You can make money helping people. In fact, those are some of the most successful businesses is the ones that help people. I heard this quote from Seth Godin that I'm probably misquoting, but I quote it all the time. So it's true to me. Seth, if you're listening, thank you for sparking this. Seth Godin said, ethical capitalism is doing work that you would do for half price because you love it so much, but your client would pay double because it's so high quality and it matters so much to them. And I'm like, freaking yes, dude. Like that's the type I want to be willing to. Coke Notes is $10 a month. I want to be willing to give it to people for half because I'm like, I believe in it and I love the work. And I want someone to say, I'd pay $20 a month for this. This is amazing. That is the freaking sweet spot.
And I love the mission of Coke Notes. So for you as the CEO, what has been the hardest part of growing this company?
Not quitting. I kind of already answered it, but I'll pick a different one because we already covered that. Honestly, people. I have worked with employees who have diagnosed mental health conditions. I have worked with employees who have very complex financial situations or living situations. I've worked with people who love direct feedback and people who can't tolerate direct feedback. I've worked with people who are really organized and like have all their projects managed and everything documented, and people who I go into their CRM and I have no freaking idea what's going on. So like learning how to effectively manage people. I love people, Gary. When I start another company, I'm not going to manage any. I'm just going to serve them. Because managing is a whole different skill set that every day I'm developing. I'll like listen to audiobooks about how to be a better leader, and I'll like ask other CEOs who built teams. I'm like, well, how did you approach this? Like it's the interpersonal, like learning how to apologize effectively to your team for making a decision that turned out to not be the right one. Learning how to hold people accountable without being uncomfortable and backtracking, because you want to appease them and you can see that they're uncomfortable with you holding them accountable. Like all of these skills that go into management, I just wanted to make something that helps somebody feel better. And then I've had to learn a lot of these skills about how to manage different personalities effectively.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think is the hardest as you grow is, you have to have the right people. The right people create the right products serve, people. And so if you don't have that people component, it's hard to build your company. And so you need that. But you're right. There's a difference between managing people and leading and serving people. And so I think that in a startup, things are changing all the time. It's chaos most days, and so you have to have, not only you as a leader have to be transparent and vulnerable about where things are at and going and what it's going to require of you, because it is incredibly difficult. It is hard, like no doubt, right? But I feel like the more you share that with your team and they're of that journey, the more you grow as a company, especially with that initial core group.
Yeah, I've had a few, not every employee has said this to me, but a few employees have said, you're a great leader. And like, it's a crazy thing to hear from what I tell them is like, I told them this today. I was like, if you think you want to work for a good boss, I want to be a good boss twice as much as you want to work for one. Like I pray for you guys. I watch YouTube videos over the weekend about how to be better and build a better culture for you, and how to like make my employees feel more supported and respected, and how to trust and delegate effectively. Like my 80% of my mental bandwidth is dedicated to like making sure you like your job, like, and you can do it effectively. Like I want to set you up for success. And I think that's one of the only things that makes it like when someone says you're a good leader, like if someone says, wow, you're very tall, you might be like, oh, thanks. But it's like, I didn't work to become tall. Like I am tall. But then if someone's like, wow, you're great at the cello, you're like, thank you. You have no idea how many hours I have sacrificed to play cello like this, So that's how I feel when people say anything about my leadership. I'm like, man. And it's like I said, it's not everybody, but a few people have said it through the years. And I'm just like, thank you.
Touches you, huh?
Yeah, dude.
Well, let's walk through the numbers real quick. I know Cope Notes, I've kind of indicated that Cope Notes is doing well. I've seen a lot of press around you, man, and proud of the work that you're doing. But let's share with the audience, like, walk me through what's current state of Cope Notes.
Yeah, our annual revenue is $7 zillion, which I'm really proud of. And I had shirts made that say that, and I wear them all the time. So we measure three things at the company, and it's right there on our website. We have an odometer. So any day you can go to our website, copenotes.com, and you can see the exact numbers. These aren't estimates. They update live. We measure how many messages we've exchanged with people, how many countries we've reached, and how many lives we have impacted. So as of right now, we've sent over 6 million messages to almost 50,000 people in 110 countries around the world. So those are the things, like when we celebrate internally, it's over that stuff. Like, of course we have revenue goals, but we're not a company that has like headcount goals. We mostly are focusing on like, how many interventions did we deliver? What type of like engagement are we seeing? Like, are people liking the messages and responding? What is the satisfaction rate? Like people reporting, I have improved mental health because of Cope Notes, or our clients reporting like lower emergency behavioral health service use because of Cope Notes. Like that's the stuff where we're like, ooh, like tell me more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What for you guys is, what does success for you look like now at Cope Notes? Like that's where you're at. Where do you want to go?
I care so much about partnerships. Like the team is probably sick of hearing me talk about it, because I think as a small company, when we started, we were trying to do everything ourselves. And I think we're at a point now where we have critical mass. Like I think we've done just about everything we can on our own. And now it's these partnerships with employee benefits companies and hospital systems and school districts and governments. Like these partnerships, you're talking, Gary, one state government contract could serve more people than we've ever touched to date. So I'm trying to get my team to orient around like, how do we build systems for partnerships at scale? So if a state says, hey, we want to enroll 900,000 people next month, we say, okay. Like that's where my focus is.
Yeah. Yeah. And with this, so I love that. Let's go Florida, by the way.
Yeah. I would love to start here. We already have so much critical mass here. I would love for Florida to lead that charge.
Yeah. Me too. With AI in the mix, what has that meant for Cope Notes? I know that like a lot of what you were doing originally was, hey, these were notes that actual people have written, that they've gone through the team. These are not auto-generated type stuff. Has the introduction of AI changed that, or are you staying true to that core?
Dude, I have been, you never meet someone who's like been in the game longer than you and they've seen it go up and down, and you're just like, wow, you are not shaken by this. We've been in I've been through something like this before. And it was, remember when everything was an app? Yes. Everything. Like it had to be an app. Like your TV remote had an app. If you want to order a smoothie, it was download our app and pay on the app. It's like, let me give you money. I have money right now. And there was a lot of pressure on us to create an app. And we didn't. I chose SMS, and I'm like, this will either make or break our company. And I don't know. Like I could have just torpedoed our company by not hopping on that bandwagon. And then you saw the federal government invest all these resources in 988, which is a hotline. It's texting and calling. And I was like, man, we bet on the right horse. Like, wow, we could have built our whole infrastructure for something else, but instead we've built like this SMS powerhouse. We're like whitelisted by all the major carriers. We have an 888 toll-free, government approved toll-free number. Like dude, the amount of compliance stuff that we went all in on SMS. And now I'm so grateful that we did. And now I look at AI as the same thing. And I'm like, in a technology landscape where, I'll give you an example. We were at a big behavioral health conference about a year and a half ago, and someone came up to us. The organizer of the conference came up to us and said, you guys might be the only vendor here that is not AI, like chat with an AI therapist. And I was like, yeah, that's now our differentiator. So it's a long way of saying we use AI like for systems. Like we're always trying to see how can we use AI to like streamline workflows and like spreadsheets and like all that stuff. And we use natural language processing and stuff. Like we're always trying to experiment and learn, but we do not use it for content generation. And it is like a pillar. Every message that you receive was written by a real human being, reviewed by real human beings, and based on proven psychology. And that is like such a core tenet. And it's kind of like, I like being the Luddite in that tech conversation where like everyone's like, oh, but if you did it with AI, it would be so much more efficient. And I'm like, maybe so, but it wouldn't be better.
I love that, man. I love, that you guys are staying true to that core principle. Because I remember thinking about this as I was prepping, and I think there is something about that human connection in knowing that message came from a human that matters. And I think probably is going to matter more as AI starts to dominate, every aspect of our life. There's a quality in human writing that AI, just doesn't match sometimes.
And there's sometimes contracts that will close because we don't use generative AI. Like someone would be like, yeah, we decided to go with you because, empathy is so important to us. And peer support is one of our main tenets, and we want to make sure that the people who get these messages know that a real human being wrote these. And like, it's like, yeah, dog, like that excites me. And it's okay. Like, it really is okay if another company closes a $10 million contract and we close a 1 million. And it's because we don't use AI. Like, morally, ethically, like, I can sleep soundly at night knowing, like, cool, they get the big contract, we get the small one. I'm still happy with the impact we're making.
Amazing, man. Last question I'm going to ask you. Thinking back on 17-year-old Johnny, if you were going to give him advice today as he's about to embark on that part of his life and that journey, what would you tell him?
I guess 3 things come to mind. One I've already said, which is don't quit. The temptation to, like, I was suicidal. I couldn't see my life getting any better. So I just tell myself, don't quit. That's number 1. Number 2 is you matter. I have you matter tattooed on the back of my neck. And it's because I want even people who will never talk to me, who will stand behind me and talk about me, but not to me. I still want to encourage them and tell them, like, hey, you matter. You are consequential. Like, if you weren't here on the planet today, things would be materially different. So it does matter if you exist or you don't. So don't quit. You matter. And then I would say respectfully, you're wrong. You don't know anything. Like, you think tomorrow's going to suck. You think your 20s are going to suck. You think the world's going to be terrible. You think, like, you're never going to have a good job, or you're never going to like where you live, or you're never going to fall in love, or you're never going to, like, all the stories that you wrote in your head about, like, all this doom and gloom, like, love you, but you're wrong. Respectfully, you're 17. You don't know crap about anything. Like, just to be open to the idea that you are not the first person in the world to be able to predict the future with 100% accuracy.
I love it. For all those builders out there, if you want to follow what Johnny's doing, he does. Obviously, you can go to Cope Notes. Johnny, where else can they find you if they want to get a hold of you?
CopeNotes.com, JohnnyCrowder.com.
Amazing. Johnny, thank you so much for kind of sharing your journey with the audience. A lot of folks are just in the midst of their own 50 cheers moments, wondering if they should launch that thing or start that idea. And I love how your story has unfolded and hopefully encourages people to think differently about what it could look like to start a company.
Dude, the last thing I want to say to anyone listening is, if you're starting something, you're like, this is hard, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Like, that is not, it being hard is not evidence. Sometimes I'll hear people say, like, well, if it's God's will, then you'll have peace in your heart. Are you kidding? If it's God's will, you have peace in your heart. Jesus is literally in the garden saying, God, please change your idea of what my life should look like. I don't have peace. Like, I don't think that if you launch and it doesn't immediately go well, or you don't close a bunch of business, or your early employees quit, it's like, dude, it's not because you suck. It's not because your idea is bad. This is just, it's par for the course. Like, you're in kind of a war zone, like a business war zone. And none of this should be interpreted as evidence that you shouldn't do it.
Amen. I want to say thank you to all the listeners of the 50 Chairs podcast. Being able to bring all of these guests who can share their expertise and advice as they've gone through their 50 Chairs moments has been a great joy and privilege. And if you're getting any value out of this, the best thing you can do to support our channel is to like us on Apple, on Spotify, or on YouTube, or share it with a friend who's going through their own 50 Cheers moments and needs to hear one of these stories. Thanks again for listening.